jubilant was the taste of victory. How sweet the rewards of peace.
It was quite an optimistic time. I remember they were writing songs about it.
Everything that you wanted was electric.
The car was a big thing in the 50s.
I wanted a convertible.
Everybody wanted a new house.
We just had a great time.
At the end of a Great Depression and war, Vermont teetered between its innocent past and the promise of a very different future. Who'd have thought things would turn out this way?
Back to the American home, with welcome and well done everywhere.
1946. Waves of returning veterans washed ashore to the strains of the most promising rhetoric they'd ever heard.
It seemed like in no time, between spring and fall, we went from, total war to everything was wide open. I remember the biggest deal was there was no housing for anybody. All these people came back and there just wasn't housing enough.
There was a cellar hole, and the first floor was up in part of the framing, and I says, I'll take it.
Everybody was coming home from the war, and everybody wanted a new house. Everybody wanted a stove and a refrigerator, and all these things. And we couldn't get a refrigerator, but there was a delivery man, and he would leave a 2-pound block of ice, and I would put it in the kitchen in a pan and put the things around it. But gradually the things became available, and gradually the house got finished, and gradually got windows, and gradually got doors.
You didn't have your own bathroom, and they charged exorbitant rent. I shared an apartment. The warmest it ever was in the winter was 52. And we would go down and ask Mr. Hudon for more heat, and he'd look at us and he'd say, "You girls need to wear long underwear."
It was the same story everywhere, lingering wartime shortages coexisting with increased availability of goods. The quest for better housing was eventually rivaled by an even more basic appetite.
Everybody was driving some old junk they'd been driving since the beginning of the war, trying to patch it together. Everybody was talking about ordering automobiles, and everybody ordering a car and waiting 2 years for it. The idea was you had the money, but they just couldn't build them fast enough.
I wanted a convertible, I guess like every young guy did those days. And one of the first things I did when I got back in the Burlington was to go in and put my name on the list for the Plymouth convertible. I just got sick of waiting, and I finally found out that I was number 522.
There was a strong scent of unlimited possibilities in the air, the promise of a new and improved America.
They were so earnest. Many people whose careers had been interrupted by being drafted or volunteering for wars were able to see a kind of a new horizon.
As the nation shifted its economic priorities, an entire generation responded to the wake-up call. It was time to jump on every available advantage with a vengeance.
Because of the GI Bill, people like myself could now go to any college.
For returning veteran Gordy Perrine, opportunity meant becoming a 26-year-old college freshman.
My family could not afford to send me to college. The GI Bill was so tremendous. They paid full tuition. The single men got $75 a month subsistence in addition to that, and married men got $105 a month. So I went through Middlebury. It didn't cost me a cent.
Those kids had seen a lot. A couple of them had been prisoners of war, a couple of them in the Air Corps had been shot down. So they'd been through life, and they were wild, and we just had a great time.
Post-war spirit ran particularly high on Vermont's college campuses, reaching a fever pitch here in the football stadium.
University of Vermont Centennial Field brings back a lot of memories. Saturdays were very special in Burlington because of a football weekend here. And it was an event. It was a weekend. It wasn't just a football game.
One name seems most synonymous with the glory days of Vermont college football, UVM's Ed Donnelly.
Ed Donnelly, he was the head football coach and the athletic director. They started a resurgence in football when Ed came here.
That was 1952. My favorite game was the Norwich game. Norwich was always a tough opponent. We were behind 27-0 at the half, and everything seemed to be going against us. We went back out there and we finally beat them 34-36. It was just one of those Humpty-Doo games that everybody talked about for a long period of time.
I can remember stealing one of their cannons, and in turn, they took the boulder off the campus. And so this, was shenanigans before the games. That was all part of the fun. It was a very interesting time. These men were anywhere from 25 to 35, some with 5 years of combat experience. And to be a 18-year-old going to college with these guys was a great experience.
How could you curtail them, It ruined a lot of youngsters who were not exposed to it previously. And they all of a sudden became engrossed with these people who were life livers, you might call them.
In keeping with the times, social freedom on campus had a funny way of cutting one way for men and quite another for women.
The women had to be in their dormitories by 10:30 at night, 11:30 on Saturday nights, and a half hour after the dance was over, if there was a dance on campus. There were no rules for men. They could stay out as long as they wanted.
They were intent on protecting the women students like the gold at Fort Knox. And they locked them up at night.
The men could do most anything they wanted to do within reason. They didn't get caught. But the girls were really tied down to very strict hours.
Girls all lived in dormitories with house mothers who had to be aroused to open the door if they came in after 10 o'clock. So there was no way of slinking home. Perhaps fire escapes were used, I don't know. The girls were not allowed to wear slacks unless the temperature went below 0 Fahrenheit, which was kind of a Vermontish concession to the realities of the world.
Women discovered that the sexual double standard didn't end at college graduation and could permanently affect their lives.
Here I was, just barely 21 years old when I went to Newport to teach. Because, of course, the first thing that you are told is by the school board. I had a list of things that I could and couldn't do. I couldn't smoke. I couldn't drink. And if I got married, my job was finished immediately. So I had these very fine young men who were my age. One of them lived across the street. And I remember when he invited me to go to a movie, and I didn't dare to go.
Having been forced to look far beyond their regional borders during the war years, Vermonters had inadvertently been drawn closer than ever to the American mainstream. Vermont was poised to begin a cultural and economic identity crisis that would last for the rest of the century. The first step was deciding that the state needed to self-promote its image to the outside world.
Vermont's scenic beauty combines with her recreational opportunities to attract the most demanding of pleasure seekers.
Yes, we were mirroring the contemporary Vermont as well as the past Vermont.
Earl Newton was president of the State Historical Society when war broke out.
When I was off in the Pacific, I had plenty of time to think about post-war programs for the society. All these things, it seemed to me, could reach an audience that we had never before reached. So I thought, why not a magazine of a popular character to take the story of Vermont history to the maximum number of people?
Vermont Life was founded in 1946
and the people who came up with it